Hey, welcome back to Happy Home and Garden with John and Dawn. If you're new here, check out our channel. We do a lot of DIY and gardening stuff. But today we're going to replace a plug on an iron. Now, one thing with irons is you never want to pull the cord to get the plug out of the wall, because when you do this again and again and again, it breaks the plug. As you can see here, I'm moving the cord side by side at the plug, and the little red light is going on and off. That means the connections at the plug have been compromised and causing the iron to short out, which could cause a fire. You'll need a few things to complete this repair. The first is a screwdriver. Next is a pair of wire cutters. These have a cutting blade in them, and they are the appropriate size for this size wire. Next, you'll need a replacement plug. These can be found at your local hardware store. In the United States, we use a 15 amp, 125 volt. This is a polarized plug. You definitely want a polarized plug, which is a newer kind of plug. One side has a fat side, one side has a skinny side. Replacement plugs do vary in size, so be sure that the hole in the bottom of the replacement plug fits the size of the wire on your iron. Now we need to determine the hot side and the neutral side of the old plug. The old plug should have a wider side, which is the neutral, and the skinnier side is the hot. Now the wider side goes into the left-hand side of this power strip, which is the taller slot. And the skinnier prong on the plug fits the right-hand side in the power strip. Next, we need to look at the cord. The cord is actually two wires surrounded by a rubberized coating. Each of these wires runs up to the prong at the end of the plug. Now, most cords will have a smooth side and a ribbed side. In this case, the ribbed side, the wire in it, goes all the way up to the wider prong at the top of the plug. And the other side is smooth and sometimes has writing on it, and that runs up to the skinnier prong on the plug. It might be a little hard to see on the black cord, so this is a cord from another iron. As you can see here, the side is ribbed. There's only like 2 ribs though, right on the very edge, and that corresponds to the neutral side of the plug, which is the fatter side. And then as you turn the cord, the other side of the cord is smooth with the writing on it, and that corresponds to the hot side of the plug. This is a diagram of what's most commonly found on iron cords, but whatever you have, do write it down because you will need it for the next part. Next, we'll need the wire cutters. Now make sure that your iron is unplugged from the wall because you could seriously hurt yourself from live electricity doing this repair. Now take the wire cutting section of your wire cutters and snip the end of the cord where it meets the plug, as shown here. Next, we need to separate the 2 wires. This can be done either by pulling them by hand, or in this case, grab one end of the wire with the cutters and the other end with your hand and peel back. About 1 inch to 1.5 inches is a good place to start. It can always be adjusted later. Next, we'll need the replacement plug. This plug here is 15 amps, which is very important to use for an iron. And the polarized plug should have a wider prong and a skinnier prong. Next, we need to open the replacement plug. Put in the screwdriver and turn the screw. Remove the screw and then open it up. It might take you a little bit to open it up. It all depends on the type of replacement plug you have. You might have to fiddle with it for a little bit like I did to get it open. There we go. Now as you open the replacement plug, you'll notice that there's 2 screws inside. On the right hand side there's a brass screw, and the left hand side there's a silver screw. The skinny prong, or the hot prong, is for the brass screw. The wider prong, which is the neutral prong, is the silver screw. And since you've determined which part of your cord is the hot and which is the neutral, you're ready for the next part. Next, we need to strip each end of the wires on the cord. I've already done the first one. Now what I usually do is I look at the jaws on the wire cutters. I start with the largest hole and then try that and see if I can strip the wires. And if that doesn't work, I try the next size down until I get it right. You want to make sure that you're always using the correct size hole for stripping, because otherwise you might strip off too much of the wire. And then twist the wires on the ends so they don't fray. Now I did strip the ends about 3/8 of an inch, but this can vary up or down depending on the type of replacement plug that you have. And it can be adjusted later too, you'll see. At this point I grabbed the replacement plug and kind of eyeballed what I had stripped and realized that I needed to strip it a little bit more. The exposed copper wire needs to be long enough to wrap around the screws inside of the plug, so I thought that I would trim off a little bit more of the sheath. And that looks much better. And then twisted the ends, so we're ready for the next part. Next, we're going to attach the ribbed neutral wire to the silver screw on the plug. First, we make a little hook on the end and make it in a clockwise fashion because the screw turns in a clockwise direction. And then put the hook part of the wire underneath the screw and tighten it. Now the length of the copper wire needs to be just right. It can't be too short or too long. If it's too short, it'll fall off the screw. If it's too long, it could touch other things in the plug and short circuit itself. You'll know you've got it right when the edge of the copper wire is just at the edge as shown here. And just when I think the screw is done, I like to give it a little extra torque. And now take the other wire and make a little hook on the end, just like we did with the first one. And then insert it into the brass screw. Now don't tighten it down just yet. Next, we want to make sure that the wires are fitting properly inside of the plug. There's a little channel on the left and the right that the wire needs to sit into. You kind of have to spread the wires apart. Now make sure that the split in the wire does not protrude past the bottom of the plug. If you've made a mistake, you can always undo everything, trim the tips of the wires back a little bit more, and then have the split in the proper position. In adjusting the wires into the little channels, the little hook came off, so I had to reposition it back onto the screw. But now that I know that the wires will fit, I'm going to screw the screw down and make that nice and tight. The wires had become loose again, so I had to put them back into their channels nice and tight. Make absolutely sure that the wires are put into the proper channels, because as it's closed, it could pinch the wires, which would be a very bad thing. When I thought everything was in position, I visually looked to make sure that everything was seated right, and then closed the case as best as I could with my fingers. And then screw the screw inside of the casing. The case wasn't quite tight, so I put it down on the countertop and then screwed from the top so that it would give me some better torque when trying to get the case closed. Case closed. Oh, sounds like Sherlock Holmes or something. So as you can see here, the case still hadn't been closed entirely, so I had to put it back down on the counter. It works a bit better when you push down on the screw with the screwdriver as you're turning the screw. It helps to push the casing together better. You'll know you've got it right when you look at the side, and you'll see that it looks very close to each other. And make absolutely sure to double check your work. The fat side should correspond to the rib side of the wire, and the smaller end corresponds to the smooth side of the wire. That way you know you got it right. All right, here we go. We're going to plug it in and see if it works. All right, so we're going to wiggle the cord and see if the light goes out. Wiggle, 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 and the light stays on. That means the plug is working. Woohoo! Yay, we fixed it! And that, my friends, is how you change the plug on an iron. And remember, the next time you use your iron, always firmly grasp the plug and pull from the wall. Never, ever, ever grab the cord and yank it from the wall, because that will break it again, and that would be bad. So thanks for watching. We hope you learned something. Check out our channel for our playlist. We have other videos on DIY and sewing and crafting and gardening and all sorts of other things. Ah, those noises. The sweet sound of power tools. I like power tools. Again. Am I ever going to get this video done? So hope you come back soon. Please subscribe. Thank you.